Do you know who you just embarrassed in front of my partners?
I know exactly who you are, and I don't cook
You ruined my meal. That has consequences.
No.
You have to shut this place down tonight.
Then do it, but you'll still go home
The
hand
kitchen
angry.
roared with the fury of 10 blowtorches, relentless and unforgiving. Jordan Hayes moved through the choreography of service like a conductor commanding an orchestra of fire and steel. Her white chef's coat bore the battle scars of a dinner rush that had stretched 6 hours without mercy. Splattered reduction sauces, a burn mark from where she'd grabbed a cast-iron handle bare-handed, and the faint copper smell of the dry-aged beef she'd been breaking down since 4 a.m. Her shoulders ached with a weariness that had settled into her bones weeks ago, and her eyes stung from the smoke that never quite cleared, no matter how hard the ventilation system worked. She wiped her hands on her apron, glancing at the ticket rail, where one final order hung like a death sentence. Table 7, VIP. The note scrawled in her sous chef's frantic handwriting said only, "Do not fuck this up." Perfect. All she wanted was to finish this last plate, lock the doors, and maybe, just maybe, remember what her apartment looked like. She squared her shoulders and reached for the Wagyu, her fingers moving with the precision of someone who'd made this dish 1,000 times. The steak was flawless, the sear a work of art, the temperature exactly 130 degrees. She plated it with her signature black garlic butter and roasted bone marrow, each element positioned with the kind of intention that had earned her a James Beard nomination she couldn't afford to attend. The server took the plate with trembling hands and disappeared through the swinging doors into the dining room that had fallen into an eerie, tomb-like silence. Jordan leaned against the stainless steel counter, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with exhaustion. Something felt wrong. The air in her kitchen had changed, charged with an electricity that made the hair on her arms stand up. 3 minutes later, the server returned. The plate was untouched, behind him, moving through her kitchen doors like he owned the building, though that couldn't be possible. Could it? Was a man in a black suit that probably cost more than her monthly lease. His presence sucked the oxygen from the room. Her line cooks froze mid-motion. Even the ventilation seemed to quiet. His eyes found hers across the kitchen. Dark, unreadable, dangerous. "You," he said, his accent turning the single syllable into something that felt like both a question and a verdict. "Are the chef who made this?" Jordan straightened, her exhaustion evaporating, replaced by something sharper. Pride, defiance. The same reckless instinct that had gotten her kicked out of 3 culinary schools and fired from 2 Michelin-starred restaurants. "Yeah," she said, crossing her arms. "That's my food. You got a problem with it." The man's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Your food," he repeated, each word deliberate, "is an insult." The kitchen held its breath. Jordan felt her sous chef's hand on her arm, a silent plea to just apologize, to bow, to do whatever it took to make this man leave. But Jordan Hayes had never apologized for her cooking. Not when her first head chef told her to tone down the spice for white customers. Not when investors demanded she make her menu more accessible. And she sure as hell wasn't starting now. She walked toward him, every step measured, until she stood close enough to smell his cologne. Expensive, understated, the kind of scent that whispered old money and older power. She picked up the fork from his plate, cut a piece of the Wagyu, and put it in her own mouth. Let the flavors bloom across her tongue. Then she met his gaze without flinching. "The only thing insulted here," she said quietly, "is that steak. Because your palate clearly can't appreciate it." The silence that followed was absolute, suffocating. Jordan could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, could feel her team's horror radiating behind her like heat from an open oven. She'd just committed professional suicide, maybe actual suicide. The man studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, impossibly, that almost smile returned. "What's your name?" he asked. "Jordan Hayes." "Jordan Hayes," he repeated, as if testing how it felt in his mouth. "I am Choi Junwoo, and tomorrow morning, when you arrive at your restaurant, you will find that I own it, the building, the lease, everything." He turned to leave, then paused at the kitchen doors. "From now on, Chef Hayes, you cook for me. Only me, every night, until I decide your palate has taught mine something worth learning." He disappeared into the dining room, leaving Jordan standing in her kitchen with a cold dread settling into her stomach. She'd wanted to own her culinary destiny. She just sold it to the devil in a Tom Ford suit. And the worst part, she couldn't wait to see what he ordered next. Jordan arrived at the restaurant at 4:47 a.m., the way she had every morning for the past 3 years. The pre-dawn streets of Itaewon were quiet, the neon signs dark, the air still carrying the ghost of last night's rain. She balanced her knife roll on one hip while fishing for her keys, mentally running through the day's prep. The short ribs needed to come out of their 72-hour marinade. The brioche dough had to be shaped, and she wanted to experiment with a new fermented pepper sauce that had been haunting her dreams. The key didn't fit. Jordan frowned, jiggling the lock. Maybe the humidity had warped the mechanism. She tried again, then noticed the lock itself looked different. Newer, shinier. What the hell? She stepped back, her exhaustion-fogged brain trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Then she noticed the black Mercedes parked across the street. Idling, waiting, the back door opened, and Choi Jun-woo emerged like he was stepping onto a red carpet, instead of a still-wet sidewalk at 5 in the morning. He wore a different suit, charcoal gray, immaculate, and carried a leather portfolio that probably cost more than her entire kitchen equipment budget. Two men flanked him, stone-faced and silent. He crossed the street with the unhurried confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. "Good morning, Chef Hayes." His voice was smooth, almost pleasant. "You're early, I appreciate punctuality." Jordan's hands tightened around her knife roll. "What did you do?" "I told you I bought your restaurant." He opened the portfolio and extracted a document, holding it out to her. The sale was finalized at midnight. The previous owner was quite motivated to sell once we discussed terms. She stared at the deed, her name nowhere on it, replaced by his in clean, legal script. Her restaurant, her dream, the space she'd poured every dollar, every sleepless night, every bleeding ambition into. Gone, transferred to this man she'd met exactly once, whose meal she'd insulted with the kind of reckless honesty that apparently had consequences. "You can't just," she started, but the words died in her throat because clearly he could. He had. "The locks have been changed for security purposes," Jun-woo continued, as if discussing the weather. "You'll find your new key inside, along with an updated contract. Your salary has been tripled. Your food budget is now unlimited. In exchange, you will prepare a private dinner for me every evening at 10 o'clock. Just you, just me, no staff. And if I refuse," his smile was sharp enough to cut, "then you're trespassing on my property, Chef Hayes, and I'll have you removed." Jordan's heart hammered against her ribs. She could walk away, find another kitchen, start over, but this place was hers or had been. Every tile, every scar on the cutting boards, every stubborn grease stain she'd scrubbed herself. He'd bought the building, but he hadn't bought her. Not yet. She snatched the deed from his hand and met his gaze with all the fire she had left. "Open the door, I've got prep to do." Jun-woo's smile widened. "I knew you'd see reason." He unlocked her restaurant and held the door open like a perfect gentleman welcoming her into her own prison. The contract sat on the stainless steel prep table like a coiled snake. Jordan had read it 3 times between breaking down a case of duck and filleting 20 pounds of halibut, and each reading made her blood pressure spike higher. Exclusive culinary services, non-compete clause, minimum 1-year term. The legal language was dense, but the message was crystal clear. She belonged to him now, at least in every way that mattered professionally. She was julienning carrots with more force than necessary when her sous chef, Min Jun, appeared at her elbow. "Chef, that man is here, in the private room. He says you know what he wants." Jordan's knife stilled, 10 p.m. Of course, like clockwork, like a debt collector, like a promise she never made, but was somehow obligated to keep. She wiped her hands, untied her apron, and grabbed the tasting menu she'd prepared. If Choi Jun-woo wanted a challenge, she'd give him one that would send him running. The private dining room was small, intimate, designed for marriage proposals and business deals that required discretion. Jun-woo sat alone at the table, his jacket draped over the chair beside him, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows in a gesture that felt almost human. Almost. "Chef Hayes," he gestured to the seat across from him. "Join me. I'm not a guest, I'm staff." "You're neither, sit." Jordan remained standing, placing the first course in front of him. Raw oysters with a mignonette so acidic it would strip paint. She'd made it specifically to punish him, to prove that some palates couldn't handle real flavor. He picked up the oyster, met her gaze, and swallowed it whole, didn't flinch, didn't reach for water, just picked up the second one. "You're trying to scare me away." He observed, "It won't work. I'm cooking what I want to cook. You said my palate should teach yours, remember. I remember everything you say." He finished the third oyster. "The brininess is excellent, the acid, however, is defensive. You're angry." Jordan crossed her arms. "You bought my restaurant out from under me. What did you expect? Gratitude." "I expected exactly this." He leaned back, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Do you know what I do, Chef Hayes?" "I know what you are. And yet you insult me, challenge me. Most people in this city cross the street when they see my car coming. But you," he paused, something almost like admiration flickering across his face. "You taste my food and tell me I'm wrong. Because you were wrong. Perhaps." He stood, moving around the table with predatory grace. Not threatening but deliberate. Or perhaps I needed someone brave enough to tell me the truth. Do you know how rare that is in my world? How suffocating it becomes when everyone fears you. Jordan held her ground even as he stopped close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the single silver thread in his otherwise dark hair. So what, I'm your truth teller now? Your conscience? No, his voice dropped to something almost gentle. You're the only person in Seoul who sees me as just a man with terrible taste in food. And I find that I'm not ready to lose that feeling. He returned to his seat, leaving Jordan standing there with her heart racing and the sudden, terrifying realization that she wasn't trapped in a cage with a monster. She was trapped with a man who was desperately lonely. And somehow, that was more dangerous. The third night, Jordan stopped trying to punish him with her food. She wasn't sure when the shift happened. Somewhere between the braised short rib he'd eaten in reverent silence, and the way he'd closed his eyes when, tasting her brown butter mashed potatoes, like he was trying to memorize the moment. It felt wrong to weaponize something beautiful against someone who was actually paying attention. Tonight she made comfort food, real comfort food, the kind her grandmother used to make on Sundays, perfectly fried chicken with a buttermilk crust that shattered at the touch, collard greens cooked low and slow with smoked turkey, cornbread still warm from the oven. She plated it simply, without pretension, and brought it to him at midnight when the restaurant was finally empty and quiet. Junwoo stared at the plate for a long moment. This is different. You wanted to learn from my palate. This is what taught me everything. Jordan surprised herself by sitting down across from him without being asked. My grandmother's food, the foundation. He picked up his fork, cut into the chicken, and took a bite. Something in his expression cracked open just for a second, just enough for her to see the man beneath the armor. My mother used to make miokuk, he said quietly, seaweed soup, every birthday without fail. I haven't had it in 15 years. Why not? Because she stopped making it when I chose this life. He set down his fork, his fingers restless against the white tablecloth. When I told her I was taking over my father's business, she said I was choosing salt and iron over family. Salt to preserve what's dead, iron to spill blood. She wasn't wrong. Jordan watched him carefully. You could leave, walk away. Could you, if someone bought your restaurant, gave you money, told you to start fresh somewhere safe? His eyes found hers. We're not so different. Chef Hayes, we both chose our prisons. The truth of it settled between them like an uninvited guest. Jordan had sacrificed relationships, health, any semblance of normal life for her kitchen. She'd chosen this loneliness, this obsession, just as deliberately as he'd chosen his. The difference, she said slowly, is that my prison doesn't hurt people. Doesn't it? Junwoo leaned forward. You work your staff until they collapse. You've destroyed friendships over a badly seared scallop. You push everyone away the moment they get close. Tell me that's not a form of violence. Jordan felt the words land like physical blows because they were true. Every single one. At least I'm only destroying myself, she whispered. Are you? He reached across the table, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his hand. Because from where I'm sitting, you're destroying any chance at something beyond these walls. Same as me. They sat in the silence, two lonely people who'd built empires out of their isolation, neither knowing how to surrender without losing everything. Finally, Jordan stood. I'll make you that soup. The miokuk, if you tell me how she made it. Junwoo's smile was small, genuine, and heartbreaking. Deal, but only if you let me help you cook it. You don't cook. Then teach me, he said, the way your grandmother taught you. Jordan should have said no, should have maintained the distance, the professional boundary, the safety of her walls. Instead, she said, tomorrow, midnight, don't be late. Jordan knew something was wrong the moment she arrived at the restaurant, and found men in dark suits, checking the perimeter with the efficiency of a Secret Service detail. Min-jun met her at the back entrance, his face pale. Chef, there's been a change of plans. Mr. Choi needs the entire restaurant tonight. Private event. He sent home all the staff except you. Except me? Jordan's stomach dropped. Min-jun, go home now. He was very specific. Only you in the kitchen, no one else. After her sous chef left, looking relieved to escape, Jordan stood alone in her kitchen and tried to calm her racing heart. She'd been naive, she realized, cooking midnight meals, teaching Junwoo to slice scallions, sharing stories about her grandmother. She'd let herself forget what he actually was. The order came at 7 p.m. sharp, a 10-course tasting menu for 6. No dietary restrictions, no preferences, just excellence. Jordan cooked like her life depended on it, because maybe it did. At 8 p.m. she heard them arrive, voices speaking Korean in low, measured tones, the scrape of chairs, the kind of silence that felt like a held breath before something terrible. She sent out each course through the serving window, never seeing who took the plates. Amuse-bouche, appetizer, soup. each dish a masterpiece born of fear and muscle memory. Then, between the fourth and fifth courses, she heard it, a sound that made her blood turn to ice. Not shouting, worse, the quiet, controlled threat in Junwoo's voice as he spoke to someone, each word precise as a scalpel. You took what was mine, now I'm taking what's yours. Your territory, your connections, your credibility, and if you ever threaten what belongs to me again. A pause, the clink of silverware against porcelain. Well, let's just say Chef Hayes has gotten quite skilled with knives. I'd hate for her to need to demonstrate on something other than fish. Jordan's hands shook as she plated the next course. He just threatened someone's life and used her as the weapon. Her kitchen, her craft. When the last course was finally served, a delicate pear tart with vanilla bean ice cream, she heard chairs scraping. Goodbyes exchanged with false warmth, the sound of men leaving with scores unsettled, and threats delivered over her food. Then footsteps, coming toward the kitchen. Junwoo appeared in the doorway. His tie loosened, something dark and satisfied in his expression. They loved it, especially the soup course. One of them asked if you cater private parties. Jordan couldn't speak, couldn't look at him. Jordan, his voice softened. You did well tonight. I fed monsters. The words came out strangled. I made art for people who, she couldn't finish, didn't want to know what they'd discussed between courses. You fed me, he corrected. The others were just there. That doesn't make it better. She threw her towel down, months of tension finally breaking. You bought my restaurant and turned it into what? A neutral ground for your war games. You think I didn't hear you threatening that man? Junwoo's expression hardened. That man tried to have you killed 3 days ago. The poisoned ingredient shipment, that was him. The kitchen tilted. What? I handled it. You were never in danger. But yes, Jordan, this is my world. And now it's yours too. He stepped closer. I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. I'm not yours. Aren't you? His eyes held hers. Then walk away. Right now, I'll tear up the contract. Jordan stood frozen, hating that she couldn't move. Couldn't leave, couldn't stop wanting to know what he'd order tomorrow. They brought Kang Min-seok through the back entrance at 2 a.m. His white dress shirt soaked crimson, his breathing shallow and labored. Jordan was still breaking down her station when the door crashed open, and 3 men half-carried, half-dragged him into her kitchen. No hospitals, one of them said in English, clearly meant for her. Please, you help. Jordan's mind went blank with panic. I'm a chef, not a doctor. He needs. No hospitals. The man's desperation was palpable. Mr. Choi says you know things. Home things, please. She looked at Min-seok, Junwoo's right hand, the quiet one who always stood 2 steps behind, who'd smiled once when she'd made kimchi jjigae that reminded him of his mother's. His face was gray, lips colorless, but his eyes were conscious and terrified. Jordan's grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Baby girl, you learn to heal in the kitchen before you learn to cook. Can't make good food with cut fingers and burns. Put him on the prep table, gently. Her voice steadied as training took over. Someone boil water. I need clean towels now. She scrubbed her hands raw, then carefully cut away his shirt. The wound was deep but clean. A knife slash across his ribs. Not a puncture, bleeding heavily but not arterial. Probably needed stitches. Definitely needed antibiotics. But wouldn't kill him if she could stop the bleeding. Honey, she muttered, moving to her pantry. Raw honey and turmeric. Her grandmother had taught her this, the old ways, before emergency rooms and insurance. She made a paste, her hands remarkably steady, and packed the wound. The honey would fight infection. The pressure would stop the bleeding. It was medieval and probably insane, but it was all she had. Hold this, firm pressure, don't let up. She guided one of the men's hands to the compress, then grabbed her bottle of soju from the bottom shelf. This is going to hurt. Min-seok nodded once. Jordan poured the alcohol over the wound to clean it. He didn't scream, just gritted his teeth and gripped the edge of her prep table hard enough to leave marks. 20 minutes later, the bleeding had slowed to a seep. Jordan had wrapped his torso in clean kitchen towels, made him drink water with sugar and salt for the shock, and was sitting on the floor beside the table, her chef's coat ruined, her hands shaking with delayed adrenaline. The other men watched her with something new in their eyes. Not fear, not pity, respect. When Junwoo arrived an hour later, his face was a mask of controlled fury. He took in the scene, his man bandaged and resting. Jordan exhausted on the floor, blood on her kitchen tiles. You saved him, he said quietly. I stopped the bleeding. He still needs a real doctor. He'll get one. Junwoo crouched beside her, his hand hovering near her shoulder but not quite touching. Thank you. Jordan looked up at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear he'd almost lost someone who mattered. I didn't do it for you. I know, his voice was rough. That's why it means something. Min-seok stirred on the table. Chef Nim, he said in halting English. Good soup, worth bleeding for. Despite everything, Jordan laughed, a sharp, slightly hysterical sound that broke the tension. And in that moment, she realized she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She wasn't just Junwoo's chef anymore. She was part of his world. Jordan knew something was wrong the moment she opened the cooler. The smell hit her first, subtle. Wrong, the kind of off note that made her chef instincts scream. She pulled out the container of king crab, supposedly flown in fresh from Hokkaido that morning. The flesh was discolored, the texture too soft. She grabbed her thermometer. The temperature was perfect, but the product was dying. Minjun, she checked the halibut. Same issue, then the scallops. The oysters, 30,000 won worth of seafood. All compromised. When did this shipment arrive? 6 a.m.? Same supplier as always, chef. Jordan's mind raced. The supplier was reliable. Had been for years. The cold chain was intact, which meant the contamination happened before delivery. Someone had gotten to her ingredients at the source. She was reaching for her phone when Junwoo appeared in the kitchen doorway, flanked by two men she'd never seen before. His expression was cold enough to frost glass. "Don't serve anything from this morning's delivery," he said without preamble. "I need you to test everything, document what's wrong." "How did you?" "I have the supplier in a room downtown. He's being very cooperative about who paid him to compromise your shipment." Junwoo's voice was deadly calm. "But I need evidence, your expertise. Can you identify what was used?" Jordan pulled on gloves and began examining each piece systematically. It took 20 minutes, but she found it. Traces of a mild toxin in the ice. Something that wouldn't kill, but would cause severe gastrointestinal distress. Enough to destroy a restaurant's reputation overnight. "Someone tried to poison my customers," she said slowly, the reality settling like lead in her stomach. "Someone tried to hurt you," Junwoo corrected. "Your reputation, your art, everything you've built." He moved closer, his presence somehow both threatening and protective. "The same people from last week. They think attacking what you love will make me weak. And what are you going to do about it?" His smile was razor-sharp. "I'm going to make sure they never threaten another chef in this city again. Legally, publicly. I'm buying their primary distributor and shutting down their supply chain. By tomorrow, they won't be able to get rice, let alone premium seafood." Jordan should have been horrified, should have protested the disproportionate response. Instead, she felt something warm and dangerous bloom in her chest. The knowledge that someone was willing to go to war for her craft. "That's excessive," she said weakly. "You're exceptional. Exceptional things require exceptional protection." He paused, then added more softly, "I won't let anyone destroy what you create." "Jordan, not while I'm breathing." The weight of his words hung between them. This wasn't just about business anymore. Wasn't about contracts or private dinners or even loneliness. This was about a man who'd found something worth protecting in a world where he'd learned to destroy everything. Jordan looked at the ruined seafood, then at Junwoo, at the fierce determination in his eyes, the carefully controlled rage on behalf of her dreams. "Teach me," she said suddenly. "Teach you what?" "How to protect myself. Your world keeps crashing into mine. I can't just hide in the kitchen anymore." She met his gaze steadily. "If I'm part of this now, I need to understand it." Junwoo studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, something like pride flickering across his face. "Tomorrow," he said, "after service, I'll show you how my world really works." The request came through official channels, a phone call, a polite assistant, a reservation for 2 at 9 p.m. on Friday. Mr. Park Sang-chul would be dining at the restaurant. With Mr. Choi, of course, a peace offering, a conversation between businessmen. Jordan stood in Junwoo's office above the restaurant, watching him read the message with an expression carved from stone. "You're not actually considering this," she said. "I don't have a choice. Refusing would be seen as weakness. Accepting gives us the higher ground." He looked up at her. "But you don't have to cook for him. Jordan, I can bring in someone else for the night." She thought about the poisoned seafood, the attack on Minseok, the careful, calculated cruelty of someone who hurt people through their livelihoods, their pride, their art. "No," she said, "I'll cook, but I do it my way." Friday arrived with the weight of a held breath. Jordan prepped alone, sending her staff home early despite their protests. The restaurant was closed to everyone except 2 men, and the war they were pretending wasn't happening. She designed the menu like a conversation, each course a carefully chosen word. The amuse-bouche was a single oyster with Korean chili and lemon. Bright, sharp, unafraid, I'm still here. The first course was her grandmother's gumbo, dark and complex, built on a roux that took hours of constant attention. I have roots deeper than you know. The second was wagyu, the cut Junwoo had first criticized. Now perfect, I learned, I adapted, I survived. But the main course, that was her message. She plated it with shaking hands, sea bass, delicate and white, surrounded by a blood-red reduction of gochugaru and beets. Edible flowers arranged like a funeral bouquet. Beautiful, unsettling. A dish that looked like violence transformed into art. She brought it out herself, setting it before Park Sang-chul with steady hands. He was older than Jun-woo, his smile pleasant and utterly hollow. "Chef Hayes," he said in perfect English, "your reputation precedes you. I've heard you're quite resilient. I cook what survives the fire." Jordan replied evenly, "This fish. It's called japchae in some regions. It means to overturn, to flip the table. Start fresh." She met his eyes. Some things can't be rebuilt on rotten foundations. The silence was absolute. Park stared at the plate, at the blood-red sauce, at the funeral flowers. Understanding dawned slowly across his face. This wasn't just dinner. This was a declaration. Jun-woo's expression remained neutral, but Jordan saw his fingers tighten slightly on his wine glass. Pride, warning, fear. Park picked up his fork and took a bite, chewed slowly, set down his utensils with deliberate care. "Exceptional," he said quietly. "You've found yourself quite a treasure. Jun-woo SSI, one worth protecting, I imagine." "Worth everything," Jun-woo replied, his voice soft and absolute. Park nodded once, dabbed his mouth with his napkin, and stood. "I believe our conversation is complete. Please give my compliments to the chef." Her message was received. After he left, Jordan collapsed into the chair across from Jun-woo, adrenaline draining from her body like water. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever witnessed," Jun-woo said. "Did it work? He knows you're not afraid of him, that you're under my protection. That hurting you means war." He reached across the table, finally letting his hand cover hers. "Yes, Jordan, it worked." She turned her palm up, lacing her fingers with his. Two people who'd spent their lives alone, finally allowing themselves this one small surrender. "No more surprise guests," she whispered. "No more secrets," he promised. They both knew it was a lie, but for tonight, in her empty restaurant with the ghost of danger still hanging in the air, it was enough. The attack came on a Tuesday, during the dead hour between lunch and dinner prep, when Jordan was alone in the kitchen testing a new dessert recipe. She heard the front door splinter first, the crack of wood giving way to force. Then voices speaking rapid Korean, footsteps spreading through her dining room like an infection. She grabbed her phone, but the call to Jun-woo didn't connect. No signal, they'd blocked it somehow. Jordan's heart hammered as she looked around her kitchen. No back exit. Jun-woo had sealed it months ago for security. The only way out was through them. She heard something shatter in the dining room. Her grandmother's vintage wine glasses, the ones she'd shipped from Atlanta. Then the methodical destruction began, chairs breaking, art torn from walls, the sound of everything she'd built being systematically demolished. Jordan's fear crystallized into something harder, sharper. They wanted to destroy her restaurant. They'd have to go through her first. She moved quietly, efficiently, years of kitchen discipline taking over. Her hands found her chef's knife, 10 inches of carbon steel, perfectly balanced, honed to a razor edge. Not a weapon, a tool, but in the right hands. The difference didn't matter. The first man who pushed through the kitchen door found himself facing a woman who'd spent 15 years learning to move with precision under pressure. Jordan didn't think, she reacted. A swift arc of her knife caught his sleeve, pinning it to the doorframe. He yelped, stumbled back. "This is my kitchen," she said, voice steady despite her racing pulse. "And you're not welcome here." Two more came through. Jordan grabbed a cast-iron skillet with her free hand, 12 pounds of American craftsmanship, hot from the stove. She swung it like her grandmother had taught her to swing a baseball bat, connecting with the second man's shoulder. He went down hard. The third man hesitated, reassessing. Jordan didn't give him time to think. She grabbed the container of flour from her prep station and threw it in his face, then swept his legs with a kick that was more instinct than training. She was reaching for her phone again when she heard it, the screech of tires outside, car doors slamming, Jun-woo's voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Jordan!" He crashed through the broken front door with Min-seok and 4 others, stopping short when he saw her standing in the kitchen doorway, knife in one hand, skillet in the other, flour dusting her hair like snow. 3 men either pinned or groaning on the floor around her. Their eyes met across the wreckage of her dining room. Jun-woo's expression cycled through relief, rage, and something that looked dangerously close to awe. He crossed the space between them in 3 strides, his hands framing her face, checking for injuries with a gentleness that contradicted the violence in his eyes. "You're hurt," he said, touching a cut on her cheek she hadn't noticed. "They broke my grandmother's glasses." Her voice cracked on the words, all the adrenaline finally catching up. "They destroyed." I know." He pulled her against his chest, his heartbeat thundering against her ear. "But you're alive, you fought back, you survived." Jordan felt something break open inside her. The last wall she'd been holding up. The final pretense that she could stay separate from his world, from him. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered into his shirt. "I can't keep pretending this is just about food." Junwoo pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "Then what is it about? You, us, this impossible thing we're building in the middle of a war zone." She was crying now, months of tension finally spilling over. "I'm in love with you, and it's going to get us both killed." Junwoo didn't answer right away. He just held her tighter, his fingers threading through her hair, his breath warm against her temple. Around them, his men were efficiently handling the aftermath, securing the intruders, photographing damage, making calls in low voices. But in their small bubble, there was only silence and truth. "You won't die for me," he finally said, his voice raw. "I won't allow it." Jordan pulled back to look at him. "You can't control everything." "No, but I can control this." He released her, stepping away, and she saw the decision settle over him like armor being removed piece by piece. "I'm done, Jordan, with all of it. The territory disputes, the shadow meetings, the endless war that accomplishes nothing except more violence." She stared at him. "You can't just walk away from." "I can, I will." He turned to Minseok, who was watching them with knowing eyes. "Set up a meeting with the council. Tell them I'm liquidating my holdings. Everything that isn't legitimate business. The real estate empire stands. But the rest," he waved his hand, dismissing an empire like it was a bad investment. "Someone else can have it." "Junwoo," Jordan grabbed his arm. "They won't just let you leave. Your enemies will see it as weakness. Your allies will feel betrayed. Then let them." His hand covered hers. "I spent 15 years building power. I didn't want to prove something to a father who's been dead for a decade. I have enough legitimate wealth to fund 1,000 restaurants. Enough connections to open doors anywhere in the world." He cupped her face gently. "What I don't have is time, and I'm not wasting another second of it on men who measure worth in fear." Jordan felt tears spilling over again, but this time they weren't born of terror. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we start over. Build something that doesn't require bodyguards and blocked phone signals. You wanted culinary immortality on your own terms." His smile was soft, vulnerable, nothing like the man who'd walked into her kitchen months ago. "Let's create it together, a foundation, a school, something that feeds people instead of feeding on them." "That's insane. You're talking about dismantling everything. Everything that kept me alone. Everything that put you in danger." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I'd burn it all down for one more midnight meal with you. For the chance to learn to cook beside you. For a life where we're not waiting for the next attack." Jordan thought about her grandmother, about the choice to build something beautiful in a world that constantly tried to destroy it, about salt and iron, and which one actually preserved what mattered. "A foundation," she repeated slowly, "for young chefs, especially ones who don't fit the mold, with the best kitchen money can buy, and you as the director, and you, as your perpetual student." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "If you'll have me." Jordan looked around her destroyed restaurant, at the broken chairs, the shattered glasses, the blood on her kitchen floor. All of it could be replaced, rebuilt. But the man in front of her, offering to trade his kingdom for a chance at something real, that was irreplaceable. "On one condition," she said. "Anything. Tomorrow night you cook for me. Just you, no staff, no bodyguards, no world watching." She smiled through her tears. "Show me you meant it, about learning, about starting over." Junwoo laughed a real laugh, unguarded and warm. "Deal, but I'm warning you. My knife skills are terrible. Good thing I'm an excellent teacher." He kissed her then, soft and careful, tasting like promise and surrender, and the future they were choosing over the past. When they finally broke apart, the restaurant was quiet. His men had disappeared, giving them privacy. Just two people in a damaged kitchen planning their new recipe. "What should we make?" Junwoo asked. Jordan smiled. "Miyokuk for new beginnings. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love over power, vulnerability over control, and a new beginning over a perfect empire." Jordan and Junwoo found each other in the most unlikely place between danger and dinner, ambition and surrender. Their story proves that it's never too late to rewrite your recipe for life, even when the world tells you to stay in your lane. What about you? What are you holding on to that's keeping you from the life and love you actually deserve? What empire would you be willing to rebuild for a chance at something real? If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have stayed and fought, or walked away? What dish would you serve to send a message to your enemies? Hit that like button if you believe in second chances and new beginnings. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story about people who choose courage over comfort. And here's your challenge this week. Cook a meal for someone who matters. No phones, no distractions, just you, them, and the conversation you've been avoiding. Because sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is sit down at a table and be honest. From my kitchen to yours, may you always choose the recipe that feeds your soul. See you in the next story.